Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and in this video, I want to share with you my thoughts of what makes an Erudition character very strong meta and even ideal because overcoming a lot of the technical downsides of Erudition characters. Again, this is a fan-made video, we don't discuss leaks on the channel, and it's a very nice segue from our previous video which we talk about a new path, perhaps coming in Honkai Star Rail. Let's talk about some old paths and let's start off first with Erudition that I really want to talk about as well. What makes Erudition characters good and what are they generally used for in the game state? Right now, currently at our patch, the popular ones maybe are like characters like Argenti, characters like Kimiko, characters like Herta. All these characters are used currently, and the main downside of Erudition characters is they're mostly played in the pure fiction game mode, and outside of that, they don't really see too much play. So in terms of the gamescape, the whole entire game state, right? Everything is like mostly dominated by destruction, break, nihility to some extent. In the current game state of like pure fiction, apocalyptic shadow and whatever, everything's like dominated by the same things. So how do we get Erudition characters in the game? They are really good in AoE functions, hit many monsters. So one of the biggest downside out of all of them, I think, their key weakness. So damage here, all of them have great AoE damage. So this is what makes Erudition characters great. They need to hit in an AoE. But the one downside some of you might realize right now is when you're left with like a single target boss, like one boss left, it's really very difficult for you to, for example, kill that boss because your damage is all like split into AoE faction, right? You're hitting everything. So when there's one boss left, your damage utility like kind of becomes 20% because instead of hitting 5 enemies, you're just hitting 1. So one of the biggest problems about Erudition characters is they cannot target single target bosses very well. There is one exception to this rule, and that is Argenti. Argenti, out of all the characters in the game, can hit a single target a little bit more with his second ultimate burst. So that makes him very strong to counter the traditional downsides of Erudition problems. And I think that's what makes him really good. So Argenti is an example of one thing, and as I'm talking about this, I'll explain to you what am I looking out for in a future Erudition character that makes them super strong. And one of the reasons why I didn't like say Jade is really good, but I think there might be eventually, who knows, that a Erudition character that is very worth pulling for, very meta defining, and I'm going to share with you my thoughts of what are the building blocks to build up to that. So this is primarily one of the biggest downsides, the weakness. The second downside to Erudition characters is their free-to-play light code options are very limited. Their characters in general want a lot of crit rate, crit damage, and they will need a lot of energy. So they have a lot of requirements, a lot of resource requirements, and extremely intense, but they do not output beyond pure fiction. That is the main downsides of Erudition right now in the game, in the current game state. So not only that, free-to-play options, very few. If you're talking about energy batteries, how few energy batteries do we have in the game? We have like maybe Huo. You can classify Huo. You can classify like Tingyun. These two are like examples of characters who are a little bit better at battery, but the rest of them not so much. So we are looking for more energy batteries, maybe someone that can give us even more energy on top of our max bar, like store extra energy. That'd be really good also. All these aspects will help you curb off the main weakness. Crit rate, crit damage, any character that can give you a lot more of that for Erudition characters is very good because free-to-play options for crit rate, crit damage is very few and far between. You most likely need like the limited gear for Erudition characters in order to get the crit rate, crit damage stat. For example, everyone knows how OP Jingyuan's signature was in the early part of the game, right? Before Dawn. Everyone knows that Argenti's light code is also really good because of that additional crit that you get. So any character that helps you supplement with crit rate, crit damage is going to be really helpful too. Utility aspect is another thing that I am looking out for in an ideal Erudition. So now we have like panned the landscape. All in all, the damage part, Erudition character needs to hit AoE. If you can't hit AoE, you're dead to me, right? Erudition is not going to be very useful. At the same time, the character needs to complement their biggest weakness, which is single target. So some sort of, for example, Argenti has an ultimate that deals more damage when one unit is left on the field, or maybe there's this like stacking mechanic of debuffs on the enemy. If the enemy has like 500 stacks or something, you do even more damage to that single target. All of these are signs that the character is countering the true weakness of Erudition and is going to go beyond pure fiction. So when we keep thinking Erudition sucks outside of meta, only good in pure fiction, these are things that are very important to consider and when there will actually be meta shaking, meta breaking characters in the game. I just want to share with you you some thought process as we are thinking for the future, since everything is going to change right now, right? Who knows? Other things is we need to see more energy batteries coming into the game. If we have more characters like Tingyun, more characters like Ho Ho coming into the mix, these are signs that Erudition is going to benefit as well. All trajectories to help them improve. So Ho Ho, characters like Tingyun, if we have, maybe, who knows, Fucc, Sunday, give some sort of energy to the team, some sort of battery maybe introduced in 3.x, or maybe more gear that gives like energy refunds. All this is perfect for Erudition characters, helps you get back into the game because you have more energy, more burst. Erudition characters generally want to hit their outs as much as you can, so these are really, really very useful stuff as well. For utility side of things, I also hope, of course this is a huge plus, right? Ideally, I want an Erudition character to give something to the rest of the team as well. Most of the time, currently in the game state, Erudition characters are like either your secondary DPS or you need multiple DPSs because the enemies have multiple weaknesses. Most of the time, I find most of my team playing with like one Himiko, one Herta kind of thing, so that they each like cover one main role, sort of, one different element to tackle. Similarly, in an Erudition team, likely you're going to have maybe more than one, and you want them to give like some sort of utility. A character like that maybe is Jade, who gives like some sort of utility because you at least buff a teammate in some sense, whereas the other Erudition characters like take from your team right now, right? They don't really do too much else other than maybe a little bit of damage and a bit like scaling with a little break and stuff like that. So these are all important things that I'll look out for. Characters that are interesting also is like characters like Rapper, who offer damage as an Erudition character but in another form, and she offers like break instead of pure crit damage. So this will be an interesting angle if we have more characters that are spread out. But other than that, not too many utility characters, and if you have any character that buffs the rest of the team, maybe you give crit to the rest of the team, ideally, right? Because that's one of their biggest weakness also, you don't have too many free to play gear. So buff the entire team with crit rate, crit damage, buff the entire team maybe doing more damage if we are all from the same Erudition path, giving you the very similar likes of an Akirion kind of behaviorism, or buff damage based on the same number of actions. I think these are all key signs that this character is going to be very meta in future and things I'll look out for. In terms of elements, I think the best elements out of all of them for Erudition is anything that can be broken, like its skills in the break, like physical as well as fire. These are great elements for in my opinion, Erudition characters. But at the same time, the rest of the elements the element of Erudition characters doesn't really make much of a difference as long as the character is outputting the damage. Who knows, maybe the next character we have is going to be Ice, maybe it's going to be whatever not, but that will be a very interesting thing. And I'll leave you at that. I think a character might come up in future that is going to be really, really worth our pool and could possibly turn into a new meta, and this is very important to consider as well. I hope I shared these early insights with you as much as I can. At this point, I highly recommend you check out these two other videos we have on the channel, which I think you might like. And thank you guys again so much for watching. See you in the next video.